Hi everyone and welcome along. Some of you may be aware that in the last few weeks Ant and I went on trip of a lifetime to Yellowstone through Wyoming and Montana. We also popped into the Yellowstone National Park as well. It was Ant's childhood dream to visit there. He's been obsessed with the park and with wolves in particular for a very long time, and I knew I was going to see some nature, but my goodness, I saw some nature and then some, and some animals and some amazing people and an amazing culture. Wow, it really blew me away. And although obviously painting is my day job, I did pack a little sketchbook, and I thought maybe it's time to do a sketchbook tour of my trip around Yellowstone. So settle in and enjoy. So on our trip, although I was really desperately in need of an entire break from all things work, and of course for me all things work means painting, I still thought for most people painting's meant to be fun, and it is fun for me most of the time. So I thought, right, let's take a little sketchbook, and when I said little, I meant it. This tiny weeny concertina book, which I got before last Christmas, coming on for a year ago, and I also, when I bought that, I bought this little set of paints as well. So in my painting kit was this lovely little miniature palette. I had 3 brushes that I did all my paintings with. I had a size 2 and then 2 tiny little detail brushes, and then this cool little concertina sketchbook. So let's have a look at what I painted. So the concertina sort of took a little bit of getting used to, especially when you're painting sort of outdoors without a table. I was sort of holding the book a lot of the time, like my paints would be down there. And then you might ask, what did I use for water? Well, I do have my trusty and quite rusty, it seems these days, little water clip, but also from time to time I'd have like a cut-off water bottle or a little glass, so I was doing all right. Okay, so the first place that I painted at, which was probably about 6 days into the holiday, in Yellowstone National Park, a place called Artist Point. I keep on meaning to change that. I've said Inspiration Point. And this was the most breathtaking waterfall I've ever seen in my life, down the valley, down the canyon. This is a part of Yellowstone that's like a Grand Canyon, it calls itself. Spectacular and so grand and quite far away. The brilliant thing was there was so much detail, I just couldn't even attempt to try and capture it. So with a little sketchbook, you really sort of focus the mind and play it down and just get the basics down, and I think that makes for a really charming painting. So that was my first painting, and the first day that I really felt like maybe if I got the paints out, it wouldn't feel too much like work. So we concertina on, whoops, turn a corner, and then we go to West Yellowstone, which was so beautiful. Ant really loved the sort of yellow grassy valleys there. So the Madison River was a place we stopped a lot on right at the morning on the way into the park and right at the end on the way out of the park. Usually you'd see a bison or an elk in the gorgeous sunshine, because the sun would stream down the valley in both the morning and evening. This was a great practice in what I realised would be a common theme on this trip, which was pine trees. lots and lots and lots of pine trees, and lots of them far away on hills and mountains, and how on earth to paint them. What's been great is I've actually, and I'm going to show you a little surprise in a second, is a project I've been working on with my patrons, where we've actually done a little piece in homage to all this. So we've been looking at painting tiny trees. So that was the Madison River. Amazing, amazing scenes. Right, next. This is when things ramped up a bit. Ants obsessed with wolves. I'm not far behind, to be honest. We love a wolfy kind of dog. And this is in the Lamar Valley. Now, if you know, you know, but this is a good place to try and find wolves in Yellowstone. And this was one morning. We got up early. We got up early quite a lot on this holiday. I was like, I'm sorry, is this a holiday or more work? I'm getting up earlier now than I do at home. But anyway, we've had that discussion, it's fine. Another lovely scene, and just starting now at this point to try and capture the huge undulating landscape. And there are points, especially in more North Yellowstone, where it's not so full of trees everywhere. There's a bit more of a sort of bare hill, more grasses and things. So that was really nice to play around with the different colours. And of course the huge skies, the light was incredible. And my first little portrait painting. And then we went down into a place called Slooh Creek, or I pronounce it Slooh Creek as a Brit, but it's Slooh Creek. And this was where, I mean, I don't know if you can spot it, but there's a wolf in this painting. Yeah, and it's about as big as the dot that we saw on someone's scope when we were actually there. Oh, poor Ant. He was a little bit gutted that we didn't see a wolf just sort of walk up to us and say hello. But we were in the presence of wolves. We just weren't quite sure where they were. But this tree, which was fondly named the Marge Simpson tree by everybody watching that day, it looked even more like Marge Simpson's hair than I've painted it there. But that was where the tiny dot of a wolf, in fact you can see it there, that tiny dot, that's a wolf. They were hanging around out there, which was about a mile or so away, so you really needed some good binoculars or a scope. And of course we've got a new shopping list for all the kit we need for next time. It's funny, I was giving Ant a bit of grief about this like massively long lens he bought. I was like, surely you don't need that. He really did, and thank God he did buy it because he got some amazing photos on it. So a bit of the plant life, this amazing sagebrush or sagebush, which was just everywhere, absolutely incredible colour, sort of, well, very different to the kind of sage plants we know over here. But I was really feeling like I was starting to get into my stride with my trees by this point, so I was very pleased with these. I like this painting. What have we got next? Turn the corner. Oh, something very different. I really challenged myself with this piece. This was Baronet's Peak, more over in East Yellowstone towards Silvergate entrance, where they do the best ice cream at Stop the Car. Shout out for them. And in this painting, there are 5 mountain goats. Can you see them? Yeah, well, they're about as big and noticeable as they were on the mountain. So yet again, Ant and his amazing binoculars and lens spotted them, and it was so cool. But this was an absolute towering spot, and a really nice new challenge to just try and capture all the volcanic rock, all the ways in which the light and the shadow bounced off it. And again, tons and tons of little pine trees. So that was really fun. And what I found myself doing at this point, I didn't use a pencil once in this sketchbook, but I instead, to just give myself something easy and grounding to start off with, I'd always paint in the skyline with my blue sky and then quickly put in a wash above it. You can see that little hard line there where I didn't do it quite in time. Put in the wash, and then I had this unpainted blank space underneath where I could start to fill out the shape. Okay, moving on. I think, yeah, this is my last painting from being in the park in Yellowstone. I was so enchanted from day one by the Cottonwood trees. I loved them and I wanted to paint them, and I was itching to paint them. Even before I knew I wanted to actually do any painting, I was like, I'm going to paint those one day. And I finally got a chance in Lower Lamar Valley on one of our last days in the park. We sat on the edge of quite a busy road, and I sat in the boot of our car, which turns out to be a really comfortable place to paint for anybody thinking about painting on the move or painting adventures. But again, just trying to capture the amazing colours. We were there in mid-September, and my goodness, the week we were there was such a good week for the colour change in the aspens and the cottonwood trees. I loved the trees. I think they were almost my favourite thing. I loved the animals, of course, but the trees were something else. Okay, then on our trip for the last bit, we went to the Lone Mountain Ranch in Big Sky, just outside Bozeman, which was super cool. And I was extremely pleased because it meant we were actually getting a proper relaxing holiday break by the end of it. I'd really got into the whole getting up early and chasing the sun every morning in Yellowstone, but I was so pleased to arrive at Lone Mountain Ranch. This was the Horn and Cantle restaurant and the saloon. It was just really super cool, and the food was amazing, the people were amazing, we were looked after so well, and we did a lot of horse riding. So Ant had a horse called Kino, and I had a horse called Pickles. And Pickles was always in a hurry. He was always very close to the behind of the horse in front, which unfortunately resulted in him being told off by that horse once or twice. But other than that, we had an amazing time. I've always found horses really difficult to paint, to be honest. I used to love painting them as a child, or drawing them as a child, but once I'd finished the piece, the proportions were always very strange. And it was so amazing to be able to sit and actually watch the horses just hanging around in the corral, being saddled up, having a very nice life. Those horses have a great time. And yeah, just being able to paint it and using lots of negative space again. Just a light touch, I think. I was really getting into my stride by this point.
Kino, Pickles and Harriet, Lauren,
And then, for my last painting, I thought, yeah, I'm going to fill up this book, finish it off. I went on the wrong side of the concertina, so the last painting is on the other side. But this was just a nice little study of the trees at Lone Mountain Ranch. But also, what I really enjoyed doing, I'd mentioned before that I had done that kind of paint in the sky, create a skyline, and then start painting in underneath it. But actually, what I love about this piece is I just left the skyline like that, blank. And I know there were hills and mountains there, but I really wanted to focus in on the trees, and because watercolour is such a translucent medium, I thought, well, why not try just not painting in the background and seeing what happens? So that was my last little painting on our trip to Yellowstone, and what a trip it was. And this last week on Patreon, I decided to embark on a bit of another adventure with my patrons, and we have been making a very special Yellowstone tunnel book. Now, this is my first ever go at creating one of these, and it's a little wonky, a little wobbly, and I've learned a lot in the process, and my patrons are learning a lot along the way. We're part way through making this, but I wanted to share it with you because I showed it to Ant and I made him cry, and I think for a good reason. There in the background is Artist Point, where things really came together for me on the holiday, and just a few of the friendly faces, or maybe not so friendly, that we saw on our trip who just made it super special. And so if you were inspired to maybe take a little sketchbook out with you on a painting adventure, well, why not also come and join me on Patreon and learn how to make this gorgeous little diorama / tunnel book. You could theme it to one of your own trips and turn your paintings from your holidays into an amazing little memory keepsake like this. But also, I'm thinking with Christmas coming up, wouldn't this be just the most gorgeous little present to give someone? I'm just putting that there. I think so. So if I have the time, look out, friends and family, you might be getting one of these. I promise it won't be of our trip to Yellowstone, but you know, you never know. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope that inspired you. It was lovely to share our trip with you. It was a really special time. I know Ant, at first opportunity, will be back on a plane to Yellowstone. So for all the wonderful people we met out on that trip, particular mention to Dave and Laurie, who were our photography friends, as we kept bumping into each other in this ginormous park, and yet, small world, hey? Thank you so much for making our trip so special. To the people of Wyoming and Montana, aren't you lucky? Wow, what a place to live. And to my YouTube family, thank you so much for making these trips possible and inspiring me to keep sharing my painting process. It's a real privilege to do what I do, and I don't take it for granted. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.